This is the happy hour.
Today's sponsor is Audible.com, who has more than 180,000 audiobooks and spoken word audio products. Get a free audiobook of your choice at www.audibletrial.com/late-night-parents. Why Audible? Audible content includes more than 180,000 audio programs from the leading audiobook publishers, broadcasters, entertainers, magazine and newspaper publishers, and business information providers. That's audibletrials.com/late-night-parents.
The applause couldn't just be for me, could it? This is Ted Hicks, Late Night Parents. The podcast is back. It's Wednesday, January 27th, 8 p.m. Eastern. Happy to be back with you. Let me tell you a couple of quick ways to get in contact with us. Catch us on Facebook.com/Late Night Parents. You can go to Late Night Parent on the Twitter page, or you could follow me as I'm listed under the real Ted Hicks. Want to thank our radio partners, as always, for supporting us on this endeavor. Arena Sports Network. I want to thank UNR One Radio that airs us religiously every week. Life Improvement Radio, I-95 Sports Network. I know we're not a sports show, but I want to thank I-95 Sports Network. I want to thank NGSC Sports that airs us and powers us live on the iHeartRadio app. Want to also thank XRP Radio in the UK. Tiz Shearer, you do it best. Thank you for spreading the Late Night Parent love in the UK. I hope I didn't miss anyone. There's a new affiliate called the Under.us. Good friends with 9-0. Want to thank him for, we talked last night, he's going to be picking up the show. Believe it or not, it's traditionally a hip-hop station, but I mean, we're on sports stations, we're on talk stations, internet radio. Really love you guys. And we're in talks with another terrestrial station. I don't know, we've been in talks before, so I will keep you abreast of what's going on. But as I mentioned, this is Late Night Parents. This is Ted Hicks. We have two great guests coming on tonight. Joelle Casteix. She's going to be joining us at 8:05. She is the author of, well, I believe she's authored several books, but I just received an advanced reader's copy of The Well-Armored Child. Really excited to hear her story. She's going to have something to share with us really special because I don't know about you, but most of the folks that we have on here are parents. And as you know, I am the parent. And I sit and I kind of bore you guys about, you know, the episodes with my children and things that happen. And then at 30 minutes past the hour, we're going to have Christopher Whalen, who's going to be joining us. He's our CPA. You know, it's the end of January. What's going to happen during the end of January? We start receiving our financial documents and we start getting a little nervous because should we file our taxes? Should we do a rapid return? You know, do we do it ourselves? Do we have our CPA do it? Do we go to H&R Block? What do we do? We're going to have Chris Whalen on at 30 minutes past the hour. He's going to tell us best practices. He's going to tell us about his firm. And he's also a dad. And he's going to tell us the latest. You know, he is the author of The Foxhole Father. So we got maybe 30 seconds before we bring our first guest on. Hoping that if you live on the Northeast, that you live in the Northeast, you were able to get through Jonas. It was pretty rough up here in New York from the transit. From there being all types of problems with transit, with sanitation. The fact that I live in Long Island but I work in New York caused a problem. The fact that my kids were home and they go to school in Long Island, but my wife and I, we both work in the city, so we'll get into that part of the discussion, the latter part of the show, hoping everyone is safe. And I will introduce our first guest. I want to thank our friends at Smith Publicity, our good friends Christy, who were basically able to make this happen. I'm really excited. I can't tell you. I'm a little nervous too. I'm going to bring on Joelle Casteix. Joelle, how you doing?
Well, I was great until you reminded me it's almost tax time. Now I'm depressed.
Oh my goodness! I want to thank you for joining us. I was watching you on TED Talks. I was taken aback a little bit because I was like, boy, I really have a big star coming on here tonight.
Oh, well, now I feel better. Thank you.
Oh my goodness! So I received the advance copy earlier. I tweeted it out to you, a picture of it. I want to thank you and the PR team for always making things happen. I had yet to start to read it, but I did initially skim through it. Joelle, I'm just going to decrease. I want you to tell your story, bring awareness to a few things, and I guess we'll go from there because I have a couple of questions, and I know it's a subject that's near and dear to you. So I'm going to stop talking. Let the world know who you are.
Okay. Well, first, thank you so much for having me on the show. Anytime I can talk to parents is so valuable because I think that that's how we're going to change the world. I grew up in Southern California, and where I still live, and I am a survivor of child sexual abuse. I was sexually abused at my high school, which is a very prestigious Catholic high school here in Southern California, and I was targeted by my choir teacher because I was vulnerable. I came from an alcoholic home. My father was in big denial and just trying to keep his family together. And so as the younger daughter, I just fell through the cracks, and I was looking for adult mentorship. I was looking for an adult who would listen to my problems and who would help me. But unfortunately, I was targeted by a predator who used attention and manipulation and flattery to blur sexual boundaries and began sexually abusing me. And so the abuse lasted for 2 years until I was 17. And when I graduated from high school, I was pregnant and had a sexually transmitted disease. And I was alone. And because predators are cunning, they work very hard to separate you and isolate you from your peers. So when my peers began to become suspicious and they realized something was going on, my predator threatened them and said, "You better not say anything or you're going to get in trouble." When I went to a school official and said, "Hey, something weird is going on," she told me, because she had already talked to my predator, that this is what love was. And if I said anything, that I would get in trouble. Oh yeah, and there's a huge cover-up scandal at my high school. It was terrible. That involved dozens of kids, and I was isolated from my parents already. And so I was horribly sexually abused. I was all alone, and I had no one to go to. And so that's what keeps kids from reporting. That's what keeps kids from coming forward. Because now all of a sudden, I'm convinced that it's all my fault, that I must have done something to ask for it, that I'm this horrible, bad, and shameful person. And so I lived in this isolation and shame and self-destructive behavior for years. And and then as many victims of child sexual abuse do, we grow up, your psychosexual development stops the day the abuse starts. And so you don't learn coping skills. You don't learn how to interact properly with other people. You don't understand what boundaries are. You don't understand how to have relationships because you didn't learn to do it with your peers. An adult forced it on you. And so, I somehow clawed my way through college and ended up getting married and divorced in a horrible relationship. And it wasn't until my late 20s that I realized that if I continued on the path I was on, I was going to die. There was just no way that I was going to be able to survive this, because I was so depressed and so self-destructive and so full of shame. And maybe it was a combination of spite or whatever, or just the desire to actually say, hey, maybe there's a better option here. I decided, you know what, I have a choice. I can live or I can die. I can change and make my life better, or I can stay on this track and, nosedive. And so I decided to change my life, and I took responsibility. And I didn't take blame for the abuse, because it wasn't my fault. But I took responsibility for how I was living my life then. And so when I was a few years later, and when I was 33, I was able to, in California, we had a civil window. You're in New York. There's a huge movement to have a civil window for child sex abuse victims going on right now in New York. And these things are amazing because it allows older victims to come forward and use the civil courts, meet the burden of proof and all that other stuff, to expose their abuser. And when I was abused, the law at the time said that I had to come forward when I was 19. If I didn't do by the time I was 19, that was it. Mm-hmm. So if I was 19 and 1 day old and he was abusing other people, there was nothing I could do about it to expose what happened to me. So this 1 year window opened. I was 32, and I filed, I finally decided, I'm going to file a lawsuit, and I did. And there was about 2 years of litigation that went on. And throughout the litigation, the man who sexually abused me went out to the media and said that I was lying and that it didn't happen and that I was emotionally disturbed and all this stuff. And by this time, I'm a working professional, so it was not a big career builder for me. But when the litigation ended 2 years later, I was one of 97 kids who had come forward in Orange County, California. 30 of us were from my high school. That's how bad it was. And I got 200 pages of documents in my case. And in it was a signed confession from my perpetrator saying that he had sexually abused me and other girls. There was paperwork from administrators who said, oh, yeah, they knew about it, but they really, they didn't think it was that big a deal. And then there was paperwork from the Diocese of Orange, who owned and ran the school, saying that, they didn't think it was that big a deal because I was emotionally disturbed. And it was astounding to see these documents because, talk about huge vindication. Because when people tell, they spent 15 years telling me that it was all my fault and that I was a liar. And here are all these documents that show how adults in positions of power over kids are blaming children for their own abuse, are saying that children deserve it because they have emotional problems, and are allowing predators to sign signed confessions and quietly go away and get other jobs without calling the cops. And after that, I did receive a financial settlement, and that was a big decision time in my life. And and I became a big whistleblower and a big advocate, and I still am for victims of clergy sexual abuse. And when you're a whistleblower and are public in the paper and on TV, you're not really high on the corporation's list of potential hires. So I really had to rethink my career. And so I decided that I was going to devote myself to exposing abuse and helping victims and, getting the word out there. And then I had a son. And when he was born, my husband and I were given all these books, how to change diapers and how to teach your kids sign language and how to do this and how to do that. And there was nothing about protecting your child against child sexual abuse.
Right.
And it didn't really strike me that much until I started talking to other parents who, when they found out what I did, would look at me with this deer in the headlights thing saying, Joelle, what do I do? How do I protect my kid? I never want to let him out of my sight. And my answer was always, it's so easy. I've been all over the world helping survivors. I've been to the villages of western Alaska above the Arctic Circle. I've been to Guam. I've been to Europe. I've been to Mexico. I've been to, the East Coast helping survivors. And all of our stories are the same.
Right.
And all of our abuse could have been prevented if our parents and community members just had some simple tools to identify grooming, to understand how to empower kids, and to make sure and to learn how to report. And so that's why I wrote the book. And it was interesting. I tried to get mainstream publishing interested. I had a ton of support from a couple of Pulitzer Prize-winning authors who were like, this is great, so on and so forth. They helped me try to pitch it. No one was interested. And so I said, well, you know what? This book is too important. And so it's hybrid published, which means, I have a mainstream publisher, but it doesn't get the exposure I would like it to. But that's why I've hustled so much, because everywhere I go, people want this book. And it's evergreen. It will last, the information in this book will last forever. And if writing this book will save one kid from abuse, it's totally worth it.
Totally. I want to thank you for sharing your story with us, with our listeners. I'm at a loss for words right now. My one question that I initially have for you is, why is talking about child abuse still considered taboo?
We don't like to talk about things that are abhorrent. Child sexual abuse is abhorrent. For 99.9999% of the population, the idea of sexually abusing a child is sickening. And so we don't want to talk about it. We don't want to acknowledge that it exists. And then on the other side, we have older religious views, and many churches are changing and they're advocating very differently now, which is important, but they put shame on sexuality. And
right.
So, like in my generation, so I was a kid in the 70s and 80s. I'm 45. I had to do the math there for a second. And so, when I was a kid going to Catholic school.
Joelle, I have to jump in. I'm 45 also, so don't feel bad.
Okay, good. So you totally understand me. Okay, so I went to Catholic. Yeah, I went to Catholic school in the 70s and 80s, and if I said, like, you could say head, shoulders, knees, toes, liver, kidney, bile ducts, whatever, but if you said the word vagina in school, you got in trouble.
Right.
And even if you were talking about it in a biological way. And so what this does is puts a shame on kids, and even adults wouldn't talk about it. And so they lived in this fantasy world. And we were so quick to blame children or to think that they must have done something to ask for it. And it was also so morally abhorrent, it was just easier not to talk about it. We lived in this beautiful denial, but it was an ugly denial. And there's a whole generation of children who grew into adults who lived in this shame and silence, and many still do today, even though we are much more open about it. But the reason we talk about it more is because I think survivors like myself just got sick and tired of sitting in the shadows. Because as we grew in awareness and as, we understood that crimes against children are never a child's fault, all of a sudden victims became empowered to tell their stories. And we owe a lot to the early people who came forward in the clergy sex abuse crisis, because they're the people who really started the conversation. And that now has really changed. And now, when I talk to younger mothers, they're a lot like I am. They say, it was kind of weird for me to talk about my body that way. But for our kids, my son knows all the biological parts of his body. And he knows exactly, not exactly what all of them do. He's not quite to that point of understanding sexuality, but he knows that no one touches it, no one goes near it, no one plays with it, no one spends attention on it, no one takes pictures of it, none of that. Whereas, back in the day, if a predator sat down next to a child and put his hand on her knee or her hand on his knee and said, "Hey, how are you? Ooh, oh, you're so soft," the kid would be like, "Oh, thank you." Now, my son would be like, "I'm sorry, my penis is right close to there, I don't feel comfortable. He would just say it. And that's because that's how he's been taught. And it puts predators on notice. So I think our kids today are so much more empowered than what they ever were before.
I have to ask you, Joelle, give us the top signs and symptoms of abuse so that parents should know, or things that, I mean, of course, it's going to be listed within the well-armored child, but if you can give us, I mean...
Well, first you really want to think about the signs of predatory grooming. And predatory grooming is how a child sex offender finds victims and makes them compliant. And that means that, I'm not saying it's a willing victim, it's a victim who is so confused and manipulated that they don't know how to fight back. And they just kind of sit there and take it. So once you understand the signs of grooming, things like an adult is spending inappropriate amounts of time with your child and giving your child way too much attention, more attention than that adult gives other children. If there's a lot of flattery, if an adult is giving your child gifts, especially gifts that are being hidden from you, we're talking about technology, cell phones, prepaid credit cards, anything that is out, especially out of your price range, expensive sports gear, things like that, and give it to your child without asking you first. You want to look out for that. You want to look out for secrets. You know, an adult is sharing secrets with your child, because sometimes maybe those gifts that you don't know about could include things like pornography, alcohol, and drugs, and it creates this world of secrecy. You want to make sure your child is not being isolated from you or his peers by another adult or an older child. And you start to see these things, and you're like, oh, once you start to understand the signs of grooming, then you can really intervene. Because once the child is, isolated from friends and family and has all these gifts he can't talk about, and there's all these secrets, and the only person who makes him feel nice is this predator, then the predator can blur sexual boundaries by things like talking about sex, touching, holding, hugging, kissing, and full-blown abuse. So you start by knowing those things. And, you may miss them because predators are cunning. But so you have to really know your child and open up communication with your kid. So if a child is being sexually abused, you want to see changes in their behavior. Because when you look at the symptoms of a kid who's being sexually abused, it's also the symptoms of a kid who's involved in a drug or alcohol problem. Secrecy, self-destructive behaviors, cutting, hurting themselves, drug and alcohol abuse, isolation, anger, frustration, failing out of school, quitting activities that they used to love, not seeing their friends anymore that they used to like, things like that. And it can be very subtle changes, but changes that make you say, what happened to my happy child?
Right.
What happened to my sweet child? You also want to see if there are changes in your child, if your child shows sexualized behavior that's inappropriate. If your child talks about things that you have never expressed to your child. So, for an example, I've worked with a family. At the time, she had a 5-year-old. The 5-year-old was being watched during the day by her grandfather. Grandfather began sexually abusing the child. And so the little girl would start to say things about Grandpa taking her to the bathroom. Now, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, my parents just would have dismissed that. Oh, yeah, Grandpa's fine, so on and so forth. But Mom stopped and listened and started asking questions, because younger children will want to tell you, because they don't, when they're confused, Mom and Dad are their safe haven. And so they'll want to talk. And so you give them the opportunity to speak out in their own way and not put language into their mouth, but just ask them little questions, and they may start telling you things. So you want to look for changes in behavior, changes in language, and any kind of emotional distress. And that will be accompanied by spending time with an adult who, you are not supervising, and the other things that go along with predatory grooming.
Joelle, there's so many questions that I have to ask. We're running out of time, I wanted to, I guess I'll stop here, and I really want you to talk about ways to get in contact with you. I want you to talk about your blog, The Worthy Adversary. I want you to talk about your book, best ways to purchase it, and social media handles and the like. What are the best ways to get in contact with you and find your work?
Well, I'm a scourge on the internet. So I have a website. My website is Casteix.com, and that's the spelling of my last name, which is kind of tough. So it's C as in cat, A, S as in Sam, T as in Tom, E, I, X as in X-ray. And on that website, you can sign up for my newsletter. And my newsletter isn't just like, a day in the life of Joelle. I give away all kinds of stuff. I'm always giving away free books. I have a free book giveaway coming up later this month on how to talk to adult survivors of sexual abuse. I also do a lot of work with writers trying to tell their stories. And when I have my books at reduced rates, and I always have access to resources. And all my books are listed there. You can also go on to Amazon or Barnes & Noble or Kobo or your favorite online retail store, and most of my books are up there. Amazon has the biggest catalog. And if you looked up Well Armored Child or Joelle Casteix, you'll find it there. My blog is The Worthy Adversary, and that's my website tends to be a little more parent-focused and focused on my books. The Worthy Adversary deals with breaking news as it happens when it comes to child sexual abuse, mostly in institutional organizations. Because when I'm not doing parent advocacy, I'm an expert when it comes to cover-up documents. So I'm always the person going through the documents and finding all this stuff and talking to survivors and demanding accountability. I also do a lot of freelance writing for parenting magazines and local publications, and you'll find that stuff on my blog too. And that's theworthyadversary.com. And all these websites are linked. So if you end up on one, you can always click to another. And they all link to my TEDx talk, and they all link to the books. And, the Worthy Adversary, if you really want to get riled up and not sleep, read it late at night. and then you can always get access to all my books through both sites. Oh, and then social media, I'm on Facebook and Twitter. I'm on Facebook and Twitter. I'm trying to grow my Instagram thing, but, there's only so many hours in the day. But you can find me on all of those. I have a public like page that it's Joelle Casteix, author of The Well Armored Child, and I post all kinds of stuff there too.
One thing you've left out, tell us really quickly about SNAP.
SNAP is a great organization. It's a survivors network of those abused by priests, and they are the nation's largest support group for men and women sexually abused in religious and institutional organizations. And they started 25 years ago as a bunch of clergy sex abuse victims who, before the Internet, you just thought you were the only one, and you couldn't track guys as they were moved around. And if you had letters from one bishop, you couldn't share them with someone who had letters from another bishop. And so they started as a support group and advocacy organization. And when I joined in 2002, we had really gotten into the Internet side of things, and they began to expand because, I was not abused by a priest. I was abused by a lay teacher who was covered up by the system. But we have expanded tremendously. I'm a volunteer with them. None of us are paid except for the executive director. And so, we have a Baptist chapter and a Mormon chapter and an Adventist chapter and a boarding school chapter and a private school chapter for people who just want to talk to someone who's been through the same thing they have. And it's a great organization run on a shoestring budget. And basically what we do is we raise awareness to the problem, and we tell people that it's safe to come forward and get help. And their website is snapnetwork.org.
Perfect.
Oh, and if you've seen the Spotlight movie, Snap plays a huge role in that movie.
Really? Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. Joelle, I want to give you a round of applause. Thank you so much for coming on, spending, I'm really grateful for you spending 20, 25 minutes with us. You didn't have to. You could have said, you know what, Ted, we can do this interview via email, and that's that. Thanks so much, and I want to thank our friends Christy at smithpublicity.com for also connecting us and making it happen. This is the first time you're on. We definitely want to have you back because there's so many different questions, but I want to have you back after I finish reading your book.
Great, anytime. I've had a wonderful time, and you fit all those people in your studio too to cheer me on. I gotta come back.
Thanks so much, Joelle.
Thank you.
And that was Joelle Casteix. She's a leading national expert on the prevention of child sex abuse and cover-up. I want to thank her so much for spending that time with us. I mean, there's 15 questions that I couldn't ask the well-armored child, a parent's guide to preventing sexual abuse. And what I plan to do is read her book, then have her come back, and then we're going to discuss the book in detail. So really, really appreciative. We're going to have our next guest coming on, Mr. Christopher Whalen. He's going to be joining us in the next, I would say about 45 seconds or so. We're going to go through a quick break, and we're going to bring Joel on.
Audible is offering our listeners a free audiobook of your choice and a free 30-day trial membership. Just go to audibletrial.com/late-night-parents and choose from over 180,000 audio programs. Download a title free and start listening. It's that easy. Go to audibletrial.com/late-night-parents. That's audibletrial.com/late-night-parents and get started today. Why Audible? Audible content includes more than 180,000 audio programs from the leading audiobook publishers, broadcasters, entertainers, magazine and newspaper publishers, and business information providers. That's audibletrials.com/late-night-parents.
And we're back. We want to thank our good friends at Audible. As always, we play your promo every week. A couple of people I want to say thank you to. Doing some work right now with Lifetime Fitness. We're starting to have that conversation with them. We want to see how things are going to shake out. More information is coming. As always, want to thank the good folks on the Happy Hour Network for allowing the show to air every week live. They provide the time. They pay for this time. And want to thank Mr. Lee Val and Mr. Todd Vandenberg, my partners in crime, as always. So, it's January 27th. I don't know about you, but I'm looking in the mailbox every day. I'm looking for my financial documents to come in because I think they technically need to be in by the 30th or 31st. With that being said, we don't, wing everything all the time. One of the great people I thought about getting in contact with was none other than Mr. Christopher Whalen. Chris has been on the show on multiple occasions. I think 2 or 3 times last season. And we talked taxes. We talked cybersecurity. We talked about the Foxhole Father. Want to bring Mr. Christopher Whalen on. Chris, how you doing, brother?
I'm doing fantastic, Ted. Thanks for having me on.
Hey, it's a pleasure that you can be on. You can be on with us live. I want to say thank you for taking the time out to join us. Chris, you're like family here, so enough with the pleasantries. Happy to have you, as always. Let's get down to business, Chris. And is it officially tax season? Or
yes, as of 12/01, January 1st, I've been in tax season. So yes, it's definitely tax season, and everyone should be a bit very urgent about it. As I've been saying, it's January 27th. Do you know what your taxes are?
I tell you one thing. I don't know about everyone else, but I know I receive, I would say, at least a weekly newsletter from you. And it seems like a heartfelt note from you about taxes and things that you should be looking at, your financial investments. I know you're a CPA. You have your own business. and it might sound like I'm plugging your business, but yes, I'm plugging your business. Chris, you do a fantastic job, and I'm going to start off this way. It's tax season. Let's just say I did not file my taxes, and I've been receiving multiple phone calls from the IRS. Should my antennas go up, Chris?
Well, of course, the IRS will rarely, if ever, call you. That is never the first type of communication that they'll use. So that your antenna should go up, and you should immediately hang up on anyone that calls and says they're from the IRS. It's probably a scam call looking to get you to wire some money somewhere, as if to keep you out of jail. But the first thing you should do when you get a call like that is to call me directly, which you can go to my website, chriswhalencpa.com. But that's one of many scams out there. Don't be afraid if someone calls and says they're from the IRS, because it's probably a scam artist looking to take your money.
I know last year there were issues with TurboTax. I mean, because it's like people nowadays, I understand that everyone wants to have their hands on in everything that they do, but I remember you and I were talking last year, there was an issue with TurboTax. So just tell me, I'm going to stop asking questions, tell me why we should use not only your firm, but why should we use a CPA?
Well, first of all, a CPA is someone who's doing this all year. You have some of the H&R Block kind of people. Many of them do not do taxes all year. They're doing something else. They're partially trained. So you really want to go with, as I said, you really want to go to get a root canal from someone that's doing it all year and isn't painting houses in the summer. So the urgency should be the same, and looking for someone who's professionally doing this every day. Also, we're dealing with your data online, which last year H&R Block had the problem, and there's a software called Tax Act that had a data breach recently. Several thousand people had their information stolen. So I urge everyone, if you do have your data stored with an online tax package, either your own or your accountant currently, I want everyone to call their accountant and ask, is their information stored in the cloud with their tax software? If so, you really should fire that accountant. There is no safe place. At my firm, at Chris Whalen CPA, your data is never kept in the cloud, ever. It's kept locally on secure servers in my office. And that's something that people don't realize. People are being hacked every day, and it's very important. And people can call me, reach out to me. My phone number is on my website, again, chriswhalencpa.com. I'm here for the late-night parents community to answer any all questions, as I've been doing since you had me on the show.
Exactly, Chris. Exactly. So tell us about some of the tax changes for the filing year of 2015. What really stands out?
Well, they extended something called Section 179 depreciation. So for business owners especially, they were able to buy equipment, which usually is depreciated over time, but there's something in the tax code that allows you to really expense that immediately as opposed to taking it year after year partially. So they extended that back up to $500,000. So that many CPAs and accountants don't realize that happened. So that's something significant. There's very significant changes that have gone on with Obamacare and the marketplace. There's a form called a 1095. There's different types of them. And I urge everyone to, if you have Obamacare, if you're in the marketplace, you should be getting one of these forms, either from the marketplace, from an insurance carrier, or from your employer. And this leads to putting that information, especially if you've gotten a subsidy, on your tax return. So this is something that's very confusing. It's not that simple. So it's a brand new form. I urge everyone, please, to reach out to me via email, call me to ask me questions about this. So a lot of tax returns were rejected last year because the information was not put appropriately on your 1040. A lot of notices were created. So let's avoid that this year. A lot of preparers do not know how to handle these 1095 forms. Also, I want to interject. I just did an article for a local magazine here in New Jersey, and the title is, Are You Afraid to File Your Taxes? Don't Be. And this is going out to the procrastinators out there who get to April 14th and say, oh, no, I've done nothing. And if I could just take a minute and talk about a few things that are really important that happen. For example, if the IRS, people think of the IRS as a money collector, and that is not really their main job. The money collection is separate. Their main job is compliance to get paper returns or electronically filed returns with signatures. That's their main job. Yes, if you owe money, they'll send you to collection. So number one, even if you believe you will owe money, always file a tax return on time. Don't connect paying the money with filing the return, because late filing penalties are extremely high, if not higher than late payment. So that's a very big that's good advice for people to make sure they file the paper. We can always get you on a payment plan at some time. So you don't want the IRS having you flagged as a non-filer. That's almost as bad as owing money. You want to, if you do owe a lot of money right now, it's possible we can do an offer on compromise for you. We might be able to get your taxes reduced. Everyone hears these advertisements on the radio about people getting thousands of dollars reduced to nothing, and that's really a bait and switch scheme. It is possible, but you have to go through the proper channels, give the proper financial information, and really qualify. And I can show you quickly, all of your listeners, if you would qualify for something like that without having to give me a $6,000 retainer, as these people want online on the radio. You also, if you can't file your return on time, let's say you can't, April 15th comes, you want to file an extension. You want to get an official extension into the IRS. It gives you 6 more months to file. That can avoid late filing. So even if you're late, you're procrastinating. Believe me, I get 40 phone calls and emails on April 15th at 9 in the morning saying, please get me an extension. So these are just a couple of things that are very, very important to realize, especially for those who procrastinate. And you know who you are, late-night parents, because I've been dealing with your listenership for your community. I know a lot of you. So we dealt with this last year. So that's some of the important advice I can give right now for those kind of filers.
Hey, so here's 2 questions that I'm usually peppered with when I mention taxes or I mention that you're coming on. The 2 questions are, how quickly will I get my refund? And what's the best and fastest way to get information about my refund, Chris?
Okay. Number one, if you electronically file your return, and depending when in the season you do it, you can have your money within 2 weeks or less. It's possible. If you paper file your return, it could be 10 or 12 weeks. So I urge everyone to electronically file. It is the law. You really have to have an excuse to not electronically file. But if you electronically file and you give your banking information, it could be as soon as 2 weeks that you'll get your money direct deposit in the bank. There's online, there's Where's My Refund, which is an irs.gov website, which will allow you to track where your refund is, what's the status of the processing of your return, when was it approved, and they update that every 24 hours. So that's right on irs.gov. Of course, you can write to me at my website, chriswhalencpa.com, and I can send you the links for that. So you really don't want to try to call the IRS. They've really reduced their telephone operations, which is very sad. It's very hard to get basic customer service right now. So going to Where's My Refund is going to be the best place for you to go as opposed to calling right now.
So here's something that I'll speak for myself on this one. So I make contributions to my church. I make contributions to, let's say, the Police Benevolent Association. I make contributions to Lupus Foundation. Do charitable contributions, do they trigger an IRS audit? Like, what should I be looking at?
Absolutely not. That there's no such thing as a charitable contribution. If I just did a great memo on that, a very informative memo on that. There's certain averages that people are giving. The United States citizens are very giving, and there's some reasonable amounts that you can take without. I want people to know if you donate cash or property, I want you to take that. regardless of the amount. If you have a valid deduction for giving and gifting and tithing, please, you need to put it down. If it's a non-cash contribution, there's certain paperwork, certain forms you need to file within your return to give a description. If you donate a car, if you donate clothing, if you donate books, if you donate furniture. But if you go to my website, you'll see in my memos, right in my memos tab, there is a great memo on this question, and it gives you some averages that the IRS has provided. I did some research that shows you, based on income, what are the average amounts of charitable contributions people are taking. So it really can give you a good guide for your income level as to what other people are doing and what seems reasonable, so you could be made to feel a little more comfortable and not as anxious about that question.
Hey, Chris, this is a question that's a little bit offline, but 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was crazy all over America because it was Powerball time. And it went up to about $1.5 billion from a financial planner, because I know you do taxes. I know you do the full gamut. Let's just say Ted Hicks from Late Night Parents was the sole winner of that $1.5 billion. What in the world should I do?
Well, the first thing you have to do is contact me for your free first consultation. That's the number one thing you do. And that's the first thing. But you definitely want to, of course, get the right tax advice and make sure that we have the money before you get your net check from whoever, the Jersey, New York lottery, Powerball lottery. We have the taxes withheld at that point. And you just want to be very careful that, of course, people are going to want to invest your money, and they're going to want to make a certain amount on that. So you want to go to a financial advisor such as myself who charges by the hour, whether you have $1,000 to invest or $1 billion to invest. You just want to get some good prudent advice from someone who is not making money on your money. That goes for all your investments, even your 401k. Your investment advisors, although they're very good people, they are making money off your money, and behind the scenes they could be making certain points on certain investment strategies and commissions that you don't really know about. So you should be wary as to, is someone really doing right by you? So it's good to have someone like me. My firm is hired to actually review plans that advisors are giving my clients. And my clients tell the advisors, if Chris Whalen approves this, I'll sign it. So you always want an independent person to review your financial plan who is not making any money off your money, because that is a true objective person giving advice. I make the same amount per hour regardless of the amount you're investing. So I don't give investment advice. I just review investment plans to see if they meet your goals and your strategies for your family's future.
I think there's not a single day that we're not hearing about a breach. You talked about Tax Act. We've talked about, over the past, I would say 12 to 18 months with Home Depot and this store and that one and this third party. This stuff is really, really, really out of control. And so, just tell me this much. With knowing all of this, and with, let's just say I'm a listener of Late Night Parents, and I'm listening to Chris Whalen right now, and I call my, H&R Block or whatever company that's representing me, and I ask about the cloud. How easy is it for me to get my personally identifiable information from my financial advisor and to come to you?
Well, that's very, very simple. Of course, when you have your supporting documents, first of all, you should always get those back with your tax return. So you hopefully you have that, plus a copy of your return. If you don't have a copy of your return, by law, a prior tax preparer has to provide that to you and to me. So it's very, very easy to transition to my firm. We do it every day. I did 25 today. I had intake of 25 brand new clients with supporting data dropped off at my office today alone. So people should not be worried about that. It's very easy for me to review your prior history, to get acclimated to you, and to go forward as if I've been doing your work. So I want people to not feel pressured. A lot of accountants and preparers almost have this kind of pressure that they put on someone as if they know secrets or as if they could only do the work now. That's completely untrue. And they just have to give me a call and have a free consultation over the phone or in person. And I usually get people very comfortable to know that we can handle it better, and they should be dealing with us. But to getting back to the data, make sure that any preparer you have, if it's not me, guarantees you that your data and personal information is not stored in the cloud, kept in the cloud, or processed in the cloud. If so, it is not safe, it is not secure. There are breaches going on that we aren't even told about. I hear in my professional circles with preparers at other firms, they tell me what's happening that even the public doesn't know. So never, for example, on a retail site, Amazon, Target, never save your credit card information. I know it's convenient, but never allow them to save it. Never save it in your browser. We do a lot of this kind of work for clients in business especially to protect them from cyber attacks. But individuals, talk to your tax preparer. There are tax preparers out there that are scanning your documents, that are sending them to India for 5 cents an hour to get things prepared in the cloud. And India and people there, so you got to be very careful. Get a signed affidavit from your preparer as to where your data is, your scan data, your images. These people are scanning your data and sending PDF files across the globe for other people cheaply in other countries who don't speak English to prepare your tax returns. So if they're evasive, fire them immediately and call me. I get these calls every day where other preparers will not admit what's happening, will not guarantee the data is not in the cloud. None of your data, none of your tax data with my firm, Chris Whalen CPA, is ever in the cloud or processed there for your taxes.
Chris, let's switch gears really quick. Tell me what's going on with the Foxhole Father. Great book. I know you're in the community. I know you're reaching out. Give us a quick 2-minute overview of what's happening with Foxhole Father.
Okay. A book I wrote is called Foxhole Father: The Field Guide for Fathers, and it is a guide for dads to become the masculine but non-judgmental sanctuary for their children. It's a book for all dads and dads-to-be, not just single fathers. And it gives a really good guide to situations and how I believe you should handle them to make happy, healthy, functioning adults. So you have things on play dates, you have things on alcohol, you have things on education. The most important point, if I can make about the book, is that it really forces you to self-observe and remove your feelings from your interaction with your children. Your feelings matter somewhat, but really we have to parent from the child. So every situation is different. We shouldn't interject our emotions into it. We should always be basing our parenting on what's best for that child objectively. So I'm talking to PTAs constantly. I've been doing a lot of outreach around the country in Canada and South America for psychologists and family counselors to keep my book, and they're buying the book and they're providing it to their fathers in their practice. And I'm getting, tremendous feedback. I'm sending books out every day to getting different orders. So that seems to be a really good way I'm interacting with the fathers in the communities, is actually through psychologists and family family counselors who are seeing dads who are at need or having a very hard time. And my book really gives them support. It makes them feel much less alone. Men are much less likely to reach out to talk about things. And this book, I'm totally honest with what my experience was and is, and they really relate to that. So it's been book's out for about 1.5 years now. It's sold again very well during Father's Day and Christmas. So that website is foxholefather.com. Please, dads, please go visit it. The book is available on Amazon, of course. And I'm always available to reach out through that website or my accounting website for any father at need, for any and all questions related to divorce, related to children, related to how to interact as a father in today's world, especially a masculine man. It's very hard for men to not feel that they have to feminize themselves. And my book shows you do not have to feminize yourself. You could have a masculine sensibility, and you can use that masculine sensibility to parent children to success.
Chris, I gotta thank you so much, as always, for coming through. And before I give you the applause, tell us, I mean, you told us about the Foxhole Father and how to get in contact with you. Tell us how to get in contact with Chris Whalen, the CPA.
Well, the best portal, the best place to go is chriswhalencpa.com. That's ChrisWhalen CPA.com. That Chris Whalen CPA is my handle everywhere. That's my Twitter. That's my Gmail if you want to email me, chriswhalencpa@gmail.com. People can feel free to text me on my cell phone. My cell number is 732-673-0510. I urge everyone, a lot of accountants and lawyers make it very hard to reach out to them. They're separated. They make it feel like you're a nuisance. I want to hear from especially Late Night Parents listeners. I want to answer your questions. I want to take away your worry. That's what I'm here for as a professional. Taxes are really separate. Taxes are more anxiety-inducing than a health problem usually. And I tell my doctor clients that I'm more important than them because if I could give you a 300 cholesterol or an IRS audit, you will take the cholesterol every day. So I urge everyone, please reach out to me. I'm here to answer questions. I'm here to, if you're getting advice you're not sure about from an investment perspective or tax perspective, please call me. Please email me the fact pattern. I will give you independent advice based on my almost 30 years experience.
Chris, I want to give you a round of applause.
Thank you.
As we get closer to April 15th, maybe we'll do a quick one-on-one podcast because, there's a lot of late bloomers out there that are going to be nervous, not sure of what to do, watching this stuff on TV, going to these places, selecting these rapid refund options, and really doing all the wrong things, Chris.
I agree. And don't forget, as I always say, H&R blocks are for babies.
Chris, thanks so much. Thanks so much for joining us, and we will have you back just before tax season. The deadline hits. Thanks again.
Thank you, Ted, and a very happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you.
Thank you.
And that was Chris Whalen. Happy to have Chris because he's like a double threat. And no, we also have superheroes on here. So Chris is a friend to Late Night Parents, as we are a friend to the Foxhole Father and Chris Whalen, CPA. Does great work all the time. We will be publishing his contact information. And I think we're getting ready to wrap up. I had a quick note on the best career advice for college students. Avoid easy internships. Although young job seekers with only a high school degree are even in worse shape, recent college graduates have entered a grim job market. The economy is still recovering. Entry-level wages have plummeted, and recent college grads are competing for jobs in more than 2 million of their educated and jobless peers. So just wanted to tell you 2 quick things. You know what? I won't even tell you these 2 quick things. I'll put them up on the website. But the 2 questions will the internship provide you with leadership skills? And the second option is, if anyone can get an internship, is it worth your time? We're going to do a quick blog later tonight answering those 2 questions on the best college advice for, the best career advice for college students. So want to thank Joelle Casteix from the Well-Armored, author of The Well-Armored Child, and her blog, The Worthy Adversary, for talking with us about her guide for preventing sexual abuse, and Chris Whalen, CPA. Want to thank you guys so much, and we will be back next week.